I never thought a small girl could spark a millionaire's heart with her desperate plea. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sun shone too brightly, like it knew something was coming. I stood in the town square, my heart racing. There was a crowd, buzzing, murmuring, laughing. But none of it reached me. All I could hear was the pounding in my chest and the shaky breaths escaping my lips. I was there for a reason that am why little sister Ava needed help. A rare illness. We had exhausted every penny. No more treatments left. I could feel the tears threaten as I squeezed the paper in my hand, a desperate plea printed on it, written in my shaky handwriting. I didn't know how I was going to get this millionaire's attention, that he was there, of course. Lucas Caldwell, the man everyone whispered about. Tall, charismatic, his presence made you want to shrink away and stand taller all at once. Deep pockets, a heart of ice. Or that's what they said. I had to believe otherwise. My palms trembled as I looked at the impeccably polished shoes he wore, the way they glided across the cobblestones like he owned the ground beneath him. People around me were all longing to speak to him. I could see the way they smiled, laughed, their hopes brimming like champagne bubbles, ready to pop. But I wasn't there to play polite. The air felt thick, tightening around my throat as the crowd jostled. I felt small, invisible. And yet, it wouldn't stop me. As I edged closer, I caught sight of his deep blue eyes, shining with that unmistakable allure. It was like looking into the ocean, magnificent but treacherous. Every muscle in my body screamed to turn back. I had nothing to offer. But there was Ava, and she was more than everything. Suddenly, in that sea of crowds and swirling emotions, I saw a flash of recognition in his eyes. Maybe it was a trick of the light, but I felt it. A spark. My heart ignited like a flame, and I took a deep breath. Time stopped. I stepped forward. Mr. Caldwell. My voice shook, breaking through the laughter like glass shattering. Heads turned. Eyes locked. Please. My words stumbled out, raw and frantic. My sister, she's sick. I need you to listen. Silence. A hush that enveloped the square. I felt the heat of the crowd's gaze on me, their whispers slithering around us, judging, questioning. The world narrowed down to just him and me. His face was unreadable, shadowed under the brim of his hat. My heart raced faster, pounding, almost painful. Would he turn away? Would he walk past me? And then, he smiled. But it wasn't the smile of a hero. It was something deeper, something mysterious. Was that pity? Interest? My breath hitched. Why should I help? His voice was deep, smooth, dripping with challenge. I felt a rush of adrenaline. My hands trembled as I clutched that paper tighter, my vision blurred with emotions. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. What could I possibly say that would matter to him? There was a ripple of murmurs from the crowd, anticipation hanging thick in the air. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. Suddenly, he stepped closer. I could smell his cologne, sharp and rich like fresh-cut cedar. He leaned in. Tell me why I should care. My heart leapt. My mind spun as I fought against the fear, the panic threatening to swallow me whole. I had one chance. I took a deep breath and whispered the words that would change everything, the ones that could either shatter my world all over again or make it whole. Because she's running out of time. The crowd held its breath. My heart pounded in my chest. What would he do? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference, let's connect. The weight of the moment hung between us like the thick fog rolling off the coast, heavy and surreal. I stood there, the world crystallized in that heartbeat, waiting for Lucas Caldwell's response. For a second, I could see flickers of emotion dance across his sharp features: confusion, intrigue, even a hint of vulnerability. But it melted away as quickly as it appeared, replaced with a cool stoicism that chilled the air around us. Time, he echoed, almost to himself. His eyes narrowed slightly, and I could feel the tension from the crowd as they clung to every word. What kind of time are we talking about? Days? Weeks? The reality of my sister's illness crashed into me like a wave. Hours, I blurted out, feeling the tears pool at the corners of my eyes. They told me if she doesn't get treatment soon, sheer desperation is palpable, he interrupted, and I flinched at the edge in his voice. But what exactly do you want from me? I felt the despair slick like oil inside my chest as I struggled for the right words. I need financial help. Ava can't wait any longer for treatments. I promise you I wouldn't be here if I had any other choice. His dismissal felt like a slap. There are many causes. Many people like you. Why would I choose one over the other? Each word sliced deeper than any knife. My throat tightened as I felt the crowd's whispers swell around us, curiosity mingling with judgment. Because she's not just a cause, I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper, filled with the gravity of my love. She's my sister. She's everything to me. And I know deep down I know you can help. The world stopped. For one unbearable moment, I thought I might see a crack in his icy facade. But as I looked into his eyes, all I found was that polished steel, impenetrable and cold. The crowd shifted, uneasily watching, their empathy morphing into something oddly voyeuristic. Then there was a shift. A soft voice broke through my despair, a woman in the crowd, an elderly lady with kind eyes. There are many people in need in our town. But perhaps tonight, we could gather whatever we can. A fundraiser, a community effort. Mr. Caldwell, the spirit of this town is to share community. Lucas interrupted, his tone sarcastic. Charity. What good will that do? Money doesn't appear out of thin air. The woman didn't back down, but hope does. And we can inspire hope within each other. I glanced at the woman, her unwavering strength igniting a small flicker of hope in my chest. Maybe I wasn't alone. Lucas, however, remained unyielding. I don't have time for this, he snapped, turning on his heel to walk away. Panic surged within me. Please. I called after him. What if I told you about our mother? About the sacrifices we made? He paused, his back to me, and for one breathless moment, I thought I saw him hesitate. Go home, child, he replied quietly, his voice softer now but still filled with finality. It's a fool's errand to chase after people who don't care. I felt the world crumbling beneath my feet. I remained frozen, my heart racing, drowning in a tide of shame and despair. I couldn't give up. Ava was out there waiting, counting on me to fight. The crowd began to disperse, their murmurs fading like the light of day. My heart sank, heavy and hopeless. But just as the last echoes of their footsteps faded, something unexpected happened. The elderly woman approached me. Come with me, she said, her voice a warm balm in the cold reality. There are others who want to help, and there's a way. Before I could respond, she grabbed my wrist gently, her grip steadying my trembling spirit. It might not be what you expect, but if we pool together what we have, we can make a difference. Hope blossomed once more, the scent of possibility flowering amidst my despair. I nodded, biting back tears, grateful for the kindness that seemed to emerge from the shadows. As the woman led me away, I glanced back to see Lucas still standing there, his tall figure silhouetted against the last blush of sunset. There was something haunting about him, a darkness lurking beneath his polished exterior. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Our paths were intertwined, and whatever battles lay ahead, I would face them with everything I had. As we escaped the square and the last remnants of the crowd, a chill swept through me. The air crackled with an unexpected electricity, one that whispered secrets and unspoken promises, leaving me questioning everything I thought I knew about hope, justice, and the lengths I would go to save my sister. And then, just as I turned to ask the woman about her plan, my phone buzzed in my pocket. An unknown number. I answered urgently, heart in my throat. But what the voice on the other end revealed would set off a new storm. The voice on the other end crackled like static, but one phrase broke through the noise and shattered my already frayed nerves. "In calling on behalf of Lucas Caldwell." My breath hitched in disbelief. The elderly woman walked beside me, sensing my sudden tension. "What do you want?" I managed to stammer, a rush of resentment and desperation clouding my thoughts. "That we need to discuss your proposal," the smooth, detached voice continued. "Mr. Caldwell is interested in hearing more about your sister's situation." "Interested?" I echoed incredulously. How could he possibly be interested after the way he? "Please, think this through carefully. If you want assistance, you'll need to come to his office tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp." The line went dead before I could respond. Confusion and cautious hope churned within me. The old woman was watching me with a mix of curiosity and encouragement, as if she could sense the storm brewing inside. "You should go, dear. This could be the breakthrough you need." But as I took a tentative step forward, my mind reeled with unanswered questions. Why the sudden change? Why would he even bother after dismissing me so coldly, so decisively? My heart sank as I registered the depth of the challenge ahead. Confronting Lucas again meant risking another blow to my already shattered resolve. The woman squeezed my arm gently, grounding me even as my thoughts spiraled. "I've seen men like him before," she said softly. "Sometimes, beneath the surface of cruelty, there's a flicker of compassion. You just have to be brave enough to coax it out." Bravery. Would I be able to muster enough for what lay ahead? With a small smile, she led me to a modest community center filled with folding tables and chairs. A few familiar faces lit up when they saw me, but the shadows remained marked by worry and uncertainty for Ava's fate. The old woman introduced me to a small group, all volunteers ready to help with a fundraiser for my sister. Together, we brainstormed ideas as my heart slowly unfurled. Perhaps this was the spirit she spoke of, a flicker finding light. We planned bake sales and car washes, a community movie night under the stars. Hope fluttered in my chest, but even as I felt the warmth of solidarity, the nagging doubts crept back in. Would this really help Ava in time? Or would I make a fool of myself yet again in front of Lucas? Later that night, I sat alone at the edge of my bed, the walls closing in. I could hear Ava's laughter echo in the hallway, a stark reminder of what I stood to lose. My heart swelled, and all I could do was pray for strength. The next morning, I dressed carefully, trying to calm the wild tango of emotions in my chest. There was a determination to face Lucas again, but the deeper part of me hesitated. What if he dismissed me again? It would crush the fragile hope that had just begun to grow. As I made my way to the glossy office building, I felt a cacophony of emotions: anticipation, fear, determination. The receptionist directed me to a waiting area adorned with modern art and sleek furniture, but nothing felt comforting in that moment. My mind raced through yesterday's encounter, but the door behind me swung open, and there he was, Lucas Caldwell, surrounded by an air of untouchable authority. His expression was unreadable as he approached, and it took everything in me not to shrink under his gaze. "Thank you for coming. I figured we could discuss your situation." "Why the change of heart?" I blurted out, catching him off guard. "You seemed pretty intent on ignoring me last night." "Perhaps I wanted to see if you'd fold under pressure," he replied with a glimmer of amusement, but his eyes betrayed a depth of complexity. I squared my shoulders, unwilling to back down. "This isn't a game for me. I'm fighting for my sister. She deserves a chance." Lucas moved to sit behind an impressive desk, leaning back slightly, studying me. "Let's start with details. Tell me everything." As I began relaying Ava's story, something shifted in me. I wasn't merely pleading anymore. I was fighting with the fierce love I held for my sister. This was about family, connection, and resilience more than the transient nature of financial aid, and just as I was gaining momentum, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I fished it out and blinked at the screen, my heart plummeting. An update from Ava's doctor. We need to discuss her case urgently. My breath quickened as I looked up at Lucas, whose brow furrowed slightly. The tension in the room escalated. "What's wrong?" he asked, his facade slipping slightly, revealing a hint of concern. That I need to take this, I stammered, my chest tightening. But as I stepped back to take the call, a crush of uncertainty washed over me. Whatever I learned on the other end could change everything. And I couldn't help but think, what if this was not just another setback, but a turn of fate threatening to tear apart every tenuous thread of hope I had clung to since the beginning? The phone rang aloud in my ears, and with each ring, the world felt more precarious than ever. The call connected with a jarring beep, and I was immediately thrust into the stark reality of the moment. "Hello?" I rasped, trying to steady my voice. "Is this Elena?" The doctor's voice was calm but laced with urgency. "Yes, it's me. What's going on? Is Ava okay?" There was a pause that felt agonizingly long. "I think we need to discuss some options regarding Ava's treatment. Can you come to the hospital today?" A pit formed in my stomach, threatening to swallow me whole. "What kind of options?" I pressed, my mind racing to worst-case scenarios. "Please, it's important we talk in person," the doctor insisted, and my instincts screamed that this was bad news. I hung up, the weight of dread settling heavily on my chest. No matter how desperately I wanted to believe that everything would be fine, the doctor's tone left no room for optimism. Turning back towards Lucas, who had watched the entire exchange with penetrating interest, I managed to avoid his gaze. I need to go," I stammered, the panic rising. "But you were just starting to make progress," he replied, an unexpected softness infiltrating his voice. "That I can't think about anything else right now," I whispered, feeling the cavernous distance between my heart and the rational facade I was trying to maintain. "Let's go together," he offered suddenly, and I blinked, taken aback. "You shouldn't have to face this alone." My heart fluttered in an unexpected way, battling the storm inside me. Why was he willing to step into this chaos? Was there really a flicker of compassion beneath his polished exterior? "I can't ask you to do that," I replied quickly, though the thought of his support was strangely comforting. "You're not asking," he noted, standing and moving towards me with an intensity one had not seen before. "I'm offering. Your sister's health is at stake, and whatever happened before doesn't matter now. Let's just go." It was an unexpected kindness, yet doubts clouded my judgment. It felt too generous, too risky. But I nodded, not trusting my voice. With that, I walked out of the office, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The ride to the hospital felt endless. The silence was thick, punctuated only by the faint sound of traffic outside. As I stared vacantly out the window, I felt a strange mix of gratitude and apprehension towards Lucas. The man who had once seemed so detached, so cold, was now an ally in my most desperate hour. Upon arrival, the hospital loomed over me like a giant that could swallow my hopes whole. I barely registered Lucas' presence beside me as I sped through the sliding doors, my heart racing with the unyielding worry for Ava. The sterile smell of antiseptic overwhelmed my senses, grounding me back to the immediacy of my situation. We were ushered to a small room where the doctor awaited, and as I prepared myself for the news, I couldn't help but feel the pulse of fate begin to thrum ominously in the air. The doctor entered, his expression professional yet sympathetic. "Thank you for coming in on such short notice," he said, glancing at Lucas before focusing on me. "Ava has shown some signs of deterioration, and there are decisions to be made regarding her treatment plan." My heart sank further with every word. "What does that mean? Is there something we can do?" "We need to discuss transitioning to a different treatment protocol," he advised. "It's more aggressive but may be necessary given the circumstances. I'll need your consent to proceed." My breath hitched. More aggressive? My mind raced with memories of Ava's laughter and hope. How could I decide something so monumental without being certain? "I want to do everything I can for her," I said firmly, though uncertainty gnawed at my insides. What are her chances? There's potential for improvement, but it's a gamble, he replied, careful with his words. It's important to weigh the risks involved. The side effects. This is a big step for a little girl. As the doctor went over the details, I felt Lucas' presence shift beside me. I noticed how he clenched his jaw but remained silent, lending me an unexpected strength merely by being there. Still, the weight of my choices felt paralyzing. Finally, as I nodded slowly, preparing to take the leap for Ava, my phone buzzed once more in my pocket, a stark reminder of the odds that were stacked against us. It was a message from my mother. Something happened. We need to talk. My heart raced with confusion and fear. I quickly glanced at Lucas, seeing worry dance in his eyes. What is it? He asked softly, his earlier bravado tempered with concern. I don't know, I stuttered, looking back at the doctor. Just give me a moment. Without waiting for an answer, I stepped outside the small room, my mind a whirlwind. I pressed on my phone, the screen illuminating with words that felt like a harbinger of more uncertainty. What could possibly be happening now? Each moment felt heavier than the last, each second teetering on the edge of chaos. As I read my mother's words, dread pooled in my stomach, and I realized that the battle for Ava's future was about to get infinitely more complicated. The flicker of hope I had found just hours ago started to feel dangerously unstable, and I knew that the path ahead was about to reveal more than I had anticipated. Suddenly, I was faced with not just my sister's welfare but a family reckoning that could change everything. I took a deep breath, the weight of my choices swirling around me, as I braced myself for what lay ahead. The hospital corridors felt like a labyrinth, their sterile walls echoing with the anxious murmurs of patients and families. I leaned against the cold wall, my heart pounding in time with the clicking of a nearby clock, desperate for clarity yet enveloped by a fog of uncertainty. Lucas stood a few steps away, his expression a mixture of concern and intensity, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside me. That I stared at my phone, my mother's message still glowing ominously in front of me. It felt as if the air had thickened with the weight of unspoken truths and looming consequences. What could it be? I whispered to myself, my fingers trembling as I hesitated to respond. Lucas stepped closer, the warmth of his presence breaking through my spiraling thoughts. Is everything okay? His inquiry was soft, almost hesitant. It baffled me how he could be concerned about me. His was a man who had often seemed impervious to emotion. I bit my lip, trying to find the right words, unsure how to dump my growing dread onto him. But his gaze was steady, inviting me to share my fears without judgment. It's my mom. She says something happened. We need to talk. I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. Do you want to call her now? He suggested. His tone was steady, and I could see the protective instincts flicker behind his composed facade. Taking a deep breath, I nodded, unable to shake the growing sense of dread. I dialed my mother's number, the ringing echoing in the hollow space around us. Each beep intensified my anxiety, like the ticking of a time bomb. Hello. My mother's voice was strained, the sound of a slate being forcibly dragged over gravel. Mom, what's going on? I pressed, urgency tinging my voice. It's about your father, she began, but the words trailed off, lingering in the air like smoke from a dying flame. What about him? The fear in my chest was becoming unbearable. After the accident he didn't make it. Her words landed like a lead weight, threatening to crush me under their impact. Time stopped. The world faded to a blur as my mother's voice echoed in my mind. My father was gone. How could this happen? Mom, are you sure? I stammered, the shock coating each syllable. What do you mean? We found out late last night. I didn't know how to tell you, she replied, her voice wavering with an emotion I had never heard before. I'm so sorry, Elena, I just don't know what to do. I pressed my palm against my forehead, squeezing my eyes shut, trying to hold back the wave of grief that threatened to crash over me. My father had always been the anchor in my turbulent life, the one who grounded us in chaos. Without him, we were adrift on an ocean of uncertainty. Mom, I'm on my way, I'll be there soon, I promised, forcing out the words as I hung up. Logic had vanished, and all I could think about was the unraveling threads of my family. "Hey," Lucas' voice cut through my quiet despair as he stepped closer, his expression shifting to one of deep understanding. "What did she say?" I shook my head, feeling tears begin to prickle at my eyes. "It's my dad. He's gone." The admission felt foreign, a betrayal of my heart. Lucas' gaze darkened, and he reached out, his hand brushing against mine. "I'm so sorry. I can't imagine what you're feeling right now." Did I in that moment, his warmth wrapped around me like a lifeline, the emptiness I felt blurring into a ripple of comfort and unexpected kindness in the middle of chaos. I wanted to lean into him, to let the sorrow out, but I fought against the instinct. I needed to be strong for Ava, for my family. I took a step back, fighting the urge to crumble. "That I have to go," I said, my voice trembling as I struggled to maintain my composure. "I need to deal with this." He nodded, but the concern etched across his face only deepened my turmoil. "I can drive you wherever you need to go. You shouldn't be alone right now." That I hesitated, torn between the necessity of family duty and the chaotic swirl of emotions surrounding me. But as I looked at Lucas, there was a softness in his eyes familiar yet foreign that stirred a flicker of hope. Amidst the grief. "Okay," I relented, my heart pounding with an unexpected vulnerability. "Let's go." The ride was quiet, the hum of the engine filling the silence as I stared out the window, feeling the weight of my father's absence settling heavily in my chest. I gazed at the scenery passing by in a blur, trying to prepare myself mentally for the conversation that awaited me at home. As we neared, a message pinged on my phone, a notification promising to bring even more complications to my troubled thoughts. I glanced at it, my heart racing once more as I read the name flashing across the screen. It was Ava's doctor. "Lucas," I said, my voice barely a whisper, I think there's more." "What do you mean?" he asked quickly, his focus on the road unwavering. "It's from the doctor." "I have to look." My heart raced as I hesitated, then fumbled to open the message. Each word I read sent another ripple of dread through me. "Lucas, what if it's about Ava?" "Whatever it is, we can handle it together," he assured me, his steady confidence anchoring me in that moment of uncertainty. But as I read, a cold spike of fear coursed through me. The message's content spoke of complications that could change everything, not just for Ava, but perhaps for my entire family. My breath caught, and I looked out the window, feeling the world collide with my reality in a way I hadn't anticipated. "Get ready," I finally whispered, my heart sinking as if it had dropped into a void. "Because I think it's going to get much harder before it gets better." The fluorescent lights of my childhood home flickered like distant stars, their hum intermingling with the sounds of muffled sobs and whispered conversations filtering through the living room. I stepped inside, heart thrumming in sync with the echoes of grief that consumed the space where laughter once reigned. The fragrant smell of my mother's cooking lingered in the air, a painful reminder of normalcy now shattered by loss. Lucas stayed close, his presence a constant support as I approached my mother, who was standing by the kitchen counter, her back turned. She seemed to be in her own world, bracing herself against the cool granite as if she might collapse without its strength. "Mom," I said softly, feeling the enormity of her pain suffocating us both. She turned slowly, and the moment her gaze met mine, I saw the depths of her sorrow reflected there. We rushed into each other's arms, a precarious embrace laden with the weight of unresolved emotions. Her tears soaked my shoulder, blending with the raw hurt that pooled in my own heart. For a tense moment, we were lost in shared grief, our breaths mingling, punctuated only by muffled words of comfort. "Why?" she finally whispered, pulling back to look into my eyes. "Why did this happen?" "I don't know, Mom," I murmured, my voice breaking. "I just don't know." The suffocating silence afterwards made the loss felt even more real, like a heavy blanket that threatened to suffocate us. It forced the air from my lungs, creating a hollow space where my father's laughter should have been. I searched for words, for something to say that would help, but every thought seemed inadequate against the tidal wave of our shared heartache. "That I don't know how to do this without him, Elena," she confessed, her voice small. I couldn't find an answer to that. It resided somewhere in the vast space between us, tangled alongside our anguish. As the minutes crawled by, my phone buzzed again, breaking the stillness. This time, it felt more ominous than the first. I glanced down to see another message from Ava's doctor. My heart raced anew, the heaviness in my chest doubling as I opened it. Lucas must have sensed my shift because he moved closer, his hand pressed reassuringly against my back that I scrolled through the doctor's words, the implications washing over me like ice water. A new treatment was being recommended, involving uncertainties and risks that made my stomach churn. Lucas, I breathed, feeling panic rising inside me. They want to talk about new options for Ava, options that could change everything. That he took a step back, giving me space to breathe, but never letting go of my emotional tether. Are they positive changes? His question hung in the air, tinged with the possibility of hope. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. I don't know. They could be, or they could be too late. But what if Ava doesn't have time for us to figure this out? I felt raw, each syllable dragging the weight of reality behind it. Then we fight for her, Elena, Lucas replied, conviction in his voice wrapping around me like a protective cloak. Whatever comes, we'll figure it out together. You're not alone in this. His words, however well-intentioned, couldn't fully eradicate the bubbling fear within me. I nodded, but my heart weighed down by doubt, each beat whispering that I wasn't strong enough to shoulder both my father's death and my sister's future. Do we tell Mom? I asked, my voice trembling, torn between wanting to share my fears and worrying about how much more grief we could bear in one day. His brow furrowed slightly, considering, before responding. If we decide to be honest, then yes. She deserves to know. That simple truth cut deep, and I glanced toward my mother, who seemed lost in her thoughts again. She was already battling a storm of emotions alone. Should we burden her with the uncertainty of Ava's condition on top of our family's tragedy? I can't, I finally said, shaking my head. She's hurting so much already. Emotions are messy, Lucas reminded me gently, his eyes boring into mine with understanding. But harboring them won't make it any easier. Yet within our conversation lingered a sense of urgency, a ticking clock that echoed each moment we hesitated. I couldn't evade the feeling that time was slipping through our fingers like sand. Before I could answer, the house phone rang, a sound that felt alien and intrusive. My mother jolted, wiping her tears hastily, her expression shifting to anxious anticipation. It might be about your father's arrangements, she said, her voice strained with hope. That I could see the tremor in her hands as she reached for the receiver, and an unsettling silence blanketed the room as she answered. The call felt monumental, charged with emotions that surged beneath the surface like a tidal wave ready to crash. Then the silence broke. Hello? Yes, this is she. My mother's words trailed off, her face draining of color, and dread pooled in the pit of my stomach as I caught her eye. The phone slipped from her grip, crashing against the floor, and a raw scream tore from her throat, a sound that echoed through the house like the shattering of glass. Mom. I rushed to her side, confusion gripping me. What is it? What happened? She fell into me, her body trembling, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and disbelief. It was a mistake, she gasped, clutching my arm tightly. They don't want to talk about your father. They found something about Ava. My heart plummeted. An icy dread filled me, and my stomach twisted as I processed her words. What do you mean? What about Ava? But before she could answer, Lucas pulled away, his eyes darting to the entryway as the door creaked open. A figure stepped inside, someone I hadn't seen in years. A shadow from the past, drawn into our present turmoil. I received the call to come, the figure said, voice deep like thunder in the suddenly still air. Why are you here? The question left my lips, trembling with urgency, but none of us were prepared for the answer that could very well change everything. I stood frozen, the weight of the world pressing down on my chest as I took in the familiar face that had intruded upon our grief. There he was, Vince Whitman, my father's oldest friend, a man who once epitomized everything my father had strived to become. In my childhood, he had been a towering presence, always laughing and regaling us with tales of adventure. But now, he looked worn, his face etched with lines that spoke of regret and sorrow, echoing our family's own chaos. What are you doing here, Vince? I managed to choke out, my heart pounding. His unexpected arrival felt like a disturbance in a sea already churning with turmoil. "We need to talk, Elena," he said, his deep voice trembling slightly, betraying the composure he was attempting to project. His eyes scanned the room, pausing on each of our face, me mother's, mine, then Lucas, looking for a connection, a way to bridge the chasm opened by loss. "Not now," my mother whispered, shaking her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. She clung to my arm as if reaching for some tether among the chaos. "We can't, please," Vince urged, cutting through her protest. "It's about Ava. I wouldn't come here if it wasn't serious." My heart raced anew. "What about Ava?" I asked, the words spilling out like a torrent, propelled by anxiety. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "I have some information," he said, his voice dropping to a hush as he approached. "I was contacted about a clinical trial that might be available for her." "It's not in the usual networks." "Clinical trial?" I echoed, my curiosity piqued even as suspicion reared its head. "What are you talking about? It's risky, like all trials," he warned, looking at the floor momentarily as if ashamed of what came next. "But it could give her a shot. They specifically asked for her case after hearing about her situation." "There's a chance." My mother interrupted, her voice rising with desperation. "A chance for what?" "More suffering, Mom," I said, trying to rein in the tempest that threatened to brew between them. Vince came to help. "We need to listen." Her shoulders sank, but she nodded slightly, a gesture of reluctant acceptance. I could see the flickering flame of hope battling against the shadows of despair in her eyes. Vince took a deep breath, the tension in the room almost palpable. "The trial involves advanced treatment that uses a new type of therapy they haven't had successful results with before. They've seen potential in cases like Ava's, and they're evaluating her as a candidate, with no guarantees," I said quietly, repeating familiar words that felt like a shield against the crushing weight of expecting the worst. "Of course," he replied, holding up his hands in surrender. "But if you're willing to consider it, I can facilitate introductions. I can help you." "Why would you do this?" My voice broke into the silence, tainted with lingering distrust. "You haven't even been around." "Why now?" His eyes darkened with emotion. "Because I care about your family. Because I didn't always show up when I should have. But I want to make things right, at least on this." My stomach knotted as I felt the pull of cautious hope mingling with resentment. Would he truly be a friend now, or was this yet another distraction from the real pain we had to contend with? "Can we trust you?" my mother asked, wiping her cheeks with trembling hands, her vulnerability laid bare. "You can trust this, the doctors, the treatment. It's risky and it's uncertainties," he said. "But I promise, I'll be there. I won't let you do it alone." A heavy silence filled the air, every word hanging there like a question and an invitation. As much as I feared the roller coaster of emotions this journey would bring, I also recognized the small glimmer of a choice, a way to fight for Ava's future that didn't yet exist. The phone buzzed again, cutting through the tension. I glanced down, and my heart raced with the sudden urgency of new messages flashing on the screen. The name flickering seemed to cast a light on another storm cloud gathering in this tumultuous moment. Lucas stepped closer, scanning my face, his eyes wide with concern. "What's wrong?" I hesitated, glancing back at Vince before focusing on the phone. "It's Ava's doctor. They want to discuss an urgent alteration to her care plan." "What does that mean?" My mother's voice was strained, on the brink of breaking. Before I could draw a breath to respond, I felt a surge of adrenaline driving me to act. "Maybe we should start by hearing what she has to say," I suggested, my voice steadier than I felt. Vince nodded in support. "We can use this opportunity to weigh all options," he affirmed, though there was a flicker of understanding in his eyes that told me he, too, recognized the grave stakes. As I tapped the button to answer the call, the room seemed to freeze again, everyone holding their breath for the impending storm. "Hello, Dr. Davis." I spoke, my heart banging in my chest, a whirlwind of feelings churning inside me. "We're ready to talk," but as the voice on the other end filled the air with updates on Ava's health, brimming with urgency. I knew that whatever decision we faced would ripple through the fragile web of our family, the kind of decision that could shatter, heal, or tear us further apart. And then came the words, calm and steady, offering clarity that felt surreal yet suffocating. There's been a change in Ava's health status. We need to decide the next steps immediately. I clenched my jaw, caught between hope and dread, our lives shifting on the edge of a knife. The only thing I could hear was the faint sound of my mother's heavy breathing beside me, weighed down by the heart-wrenching uncertainty of a future that could slip from our grasp with every beat of silence. But in that moment, I knew one thing for sure: none of us were prepared for the storm to come. The line connecting us to Dr. Davis seemed to stretch across vast chasms of hopelessness, echoing with unanswered questions and desperation. Each word she spoke felt like it was clawing at the fragile thread of hope that had taken root in my heart, threatening to unravel it completely. Ava's condition has fluctuated significantly, Dr. Davis explained, her voice steady, yet tinged with urgency. We need to adjust her treatment plan immediately. I don't want to alarm you, but she may not respond well to her current regimen. The implications hung heavily in the air, a suffocating blanket of foreboding. My mother gasped softly, her fingers tightening onto my arm. What does that mean? Are you saying she's worse? Not necessarily, Dr. Davis responded quickly. But we have a narrow window to act. We may need to consider more aggressive interventions, options we can discuss once you're here at the hospital. I can't stress enough that time is of the essence. Around me, the energy in the room shifted like a gathering storm. Vince stood against the wall, his somber expression mirroring my own dread. I could see him debating whether to intervene, choosing silence instead. Lucas's grip tightened around my shoulder, an anchor in the tempest whirling within me. Okay, we'll be there shortly, I finally affirmed, my voice barely above a whisper as I struggled to contain the earthquake rumbling inside. Just hold on, please. I hung up the call, and in that chilling silence, time seemed to stretch infinitely. Okay, I began, my thoughts racing. We need to get to the hospital. They're saying Ava needs immediate support, I said, searching my mother's face for any sign of readiness to move. But her eyes, those pools of sadness, were shimmering with a mixture of fear and disbelief, as if processing the magnitude of our shift. Immediate support? She echoed, her voice cracking. We can't keep losing her like this, Elena. What if she doesn't make it through? The words hung heavy, each syllable a dagger, piercing through the brittle comfort that hope had offered. Mom, we can't think that way. We have to stay focused. We have a chance to change things. My voice bore the weight of determination, trying to lift the crushing despair that threatened to envelop us all. That's easy for you to say, she retorted, frustration bleeding into her anguish. My heart sank at the sharpness in her voice, but I understood her. Her weariness was palpable, each fight we faced leaving scars on our weary souls. You're not the one watching your child suffer, trying to hold on to pieces of her reality. Vince stepped in then, kindly but firmly. Elena's right. If there's a chance, no matter how slim, we have to explore it. It's what we owe Ava. Haven't we been through this already? My mother shot back, her voice wavering, almost as if she was pleading for affirmation. She swept her gaze across the room, landing briefly on Lucas before her eyes fell back to me, desperate. How many more times can we keep hoping for something that never comes? We're talking more surgeries, more medications, more pain. I wanted to scream that it was all I could offer, hope and the chance to fight some more. But instead, I felt myself drowning in a swell of emotions. Each one reflected back at me through the eyes of the people I loved, their fear merging into mine like a dangerously turbulent ocean. In that moment, a surge of primal instinct swept over me, the survival instinct. If we don't move now, if we don't decide to push through this, we're already resigned to losing her, I said, forcing the words out with an urgency I hoped would catch her. That can't be our choice. From the corner of my eye, Lucas stepped closer, offering an unexpected flicker of warmth amidst the chaos. He reached for my hand, intertwining our fingers, grounding me as if to say he understood the storm raging between my pleading heart and my mother's fragile spirit. Enough of this, Vince interjected, breaking the tension like a thin glass. his voice echoing with a depth that demanded attention. "I will drive you. Don't waste another moment." My mother looked from Vince to me, her resolve wavering for just a moment, as if weighing the heaviness of our decisions against the lightness of a desperate escape from this suffocating moment. "All right," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. "Let's go." A hurried flurry ensued as we gathered our things and prepared to leave. The drive to the hospital was a blur of emotions and silent prayers, all set against the backdrop of the fading evening light. As we arrived, the fluorescent lights blared down, orchestrating a chilling symphony of beeping machines and hushed voices. The sterile air struck a stark contrast to the tangled emotions that had been carried into the building. The wait felt like an eternity. As we stood in the waiting room, anxiety coiling tighter and tighter, I found a small flicker of resolve nestled within me, a determination to fight, for Ava, for my family, against the dark cravings of hopelessness that threatened to engulf us all. Just then, as Dr. Davis appeared, her expression grave yet resolute, she pulled me aside, her voice low but urgent. "Elena, I need you to prepare yourself for what's to come. Our next steps are critical, and I want to ensure you understand what's at stake." The room shrank around me, the world narrowing down to the weight of her words, an anchor around my heart. With each syllable, a fresh wave of fear mingled with the determination that had surged within me moments before. "Did I it bad?" I whispered, my voice trembling under the weight of countless possibilities. Her eyes softened, yet she revealed nothing. "We need to discuss a more aggressive course of action, one that may come at considerable risk." The gravity of her statement clung to the air, charging it with an electric despair. As I stood there, a cocktail of emotions swirling, the chill of her words settled deep in my bones. But before I could respond, a sudden commotion erupted in the waiting area, wrenching my focus away from Dr. Davis. It was Ava's father, his distressed shout cracking through the tension. "That I won't lose her. Not now. Not again." Panic coursed through me as I glanced back at him, the raw emotion radiating off him like a pulsating beacon of fear. I felt the ground beneath me shift once more, the weight of our choices burdening all of us as the storm continued to spiral. I instinctively took a step forward, ready to bridge this new chasm of fear, but one small step felt like too little against the looming shadow we could all feel descending upon us, and just like that, with Ava's future hanging in the balance and those desperate cries echoing around me, I realized I was not the only one caught in this whirlwind of uncertainty. The hospital air was sterile, suffocating even, as I took in the sight of Ava's father, Tom. His face was a storm of emotions, vulnerability intermingling with rage and grief. I couldn't help but feel a knot tighten in my chest. The fierceness of his love was palpable, a haunting reminder of the lengths we would all go to for those we cherished. "Ava needs us," I found myself saying instinctively, stepping closer. My voice quaked slightly but held enough certainty to penetrate through the noise that filled the waiting room. His eyes, wild with fear but softened by desperation, landed on me. "Ava needs more than just words. I've given her everything, and it's not enough." His voice broke on the last syllable, and the rawness of it shattered my heart into pieces. I could see the shadows of past battles etched on his features, the sleepless nights and whispered prayers clinging to him like a second skin. "We're doing everything we can," I managed to say, my voice steadying gradually. "The doctors, they're trying to save her." His eyes searched mine, disbelief etched on his features. "You don't understand." His breath hitched, desperation dripping from his words like rain from an awning. "I lost her once, and I can't go through that again." Something snapped within me at that moment, a fierce resolve birthed from the well of fear I'd been trying to navigate. "None of us can. But Tom, we can't give up now. If there's a chance, we have to take it." I realized then how interconnected we all were in this struggle, a father, a sister, and a mother, all yearning for the same spark of hope. Behind us, my mother stood silent, the weight of her grief a constant companion, and it struck me anew how deeply all our lives had become entwined. As if sensing the shift, a nurse appeared to guide us to a less crowded waiting area. I followed, my heart racing not just for Ava, but for all the hearts beating in that room, each one a heart besieged by the looming specter of loss. "Please," Tom murmured as we settled into our seats, "if there's anything left to fight for, I want to know it. I want her to fight. Fighting is all we have, I said, grounding my tone with the sincerity of a promise forged beneath the weight of anguish. Before we could delve deeper into discussion, a familiar presence joined us. Lucas. He slid into the seat beside me, his gaze steady, radiating quiet strength. "They're reviewing Ava's case," he reassured us, the sound of his voice familiar and comforting against the backdrop of uncertainty. He turned to Tom, determination shining in his eyes. "She's stronger than any of us realized." Tom's confusion morphed into something like gratitude, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as though an invisible bond was being forged among us. I could tell that Lucas's unwavering faith had offered Tom a sliver of solace, something he hadn't expected to find amid this chaos, yet, the air crackled with tension, pregnant with lingering questions. "What did Dr. Davis say to you?" Lucas asked me, his voice a low whisper, keeping our conversation private yet intense. I shared the grim news, and his face lit up with a spark of hope. "A risky course could mean miracles," he said, the dreaminess of his optimism lighting a flicker of belief within my own chest. But just as that light began to glow brighter, the atmosphere shifted again when Dr. Davis emerged. Her demeanor was more guarded now, almost as if the air had thickened around her with unsaid words. "May I speak with you all?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart lurched as she motioned for us to follow her down the sterile corridor. In that moment, fear gripped me once again. What now? Would this news tear us apart where we had begun to come together? My heart raced. As we entered a small consultation room, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, amplifying the gravity of the moment. Dr. Davis stood at the head of the table, looking every bit the harbinger of either hope or despair. "Listen closely," she began, her tone steady, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. The air felt heavy, charged with dread. "We need to review some potential options for Ava's treatment. One of them entails a clinical trial that could hold the key to a significant breakthrough." But what?" I pressed, unable to hide the urgency in my voice. "There are inherent risks," she continued, choosing her words deliberately. "The medication is experimental and could have side effects that are severe. Still, the potential benefits could outweigh them." Tom visibly paled, his fingers balling into fists resting on the table. "How severe?" he managed to croak out, his voice strained. "Complications could arise, including severe allergic reactions, and there's no guarantee this would work. The risk is yours to bear." I glanced at Lucas, feeling the tension ripple through the room. As I digested the weight of the choice that lay ahead, my thoughts began to race. Was it worth it? Could we gamble Ava's fragile hopes on a treatment that was largely untested? Suddenly, the tension was punctured by an unexpected sound, a shriek of laughter from a nearby room, the sharp contrast making our situation almost surreal. I flashed momentarily to Ava, her spirit dancing, her laughter echoing in my ears. A surge of emptiness gripped me. The very thing we were trying to salvage. In that brief moment of joy from another family, a painful realization struck. Hope hovered just beyond reach, shimmering like a mirage but always slipping through our fingers. I felt the clash of fear and hope, the promise of healing shadowed by the specter of failure. Dr. Davis' voice cut through my thoughts. "The final decision rests with you." Her words lingered in the air, heavy and ominous, like the shifting tides before a storm. The room, once filled with quiet acceptance, now reverberated with the weight of possibility and the shadow of despair. "Whatever we decide, we need to think about this as a family," I declared, looking at Tom, Lucas, and finally my mother, searching for a glimmer of unity. "Ava needs all of us, deserves the fight." But before anyone could respond, the door swung open, and my heart dropped. Standing in the doorway was a small figure, bedraggled and exhausted, yet unmistakably familiar. Ava, her wide, pleading eyes locking onto ours. "Mom." "I'm scared," she said, the quiet simplicity of her words striking our hearts like a hammer. The moment crystallized everything, every struggle, every thought, and every decision loomed around us in suspense. And as we stood there, caught between the definitions of hope and despair, one thing remained inexplicably clear: no matter the outcome, we were all in this together. But just as I took a step towards her, the uncertainty of our choices hang heavier than ever, a new revelation dawning upon me like a dark horizon. For with Ava's unexpected appearance came an uninvited thought: what if her arrival changed everything? What if she didn't merely need hope, but became part of a decision that would forever alter our paths and redefine what we were willing to sacrifice to pull her through the storm? Ava stood in the doorway, the embodiment of courage wrapped in vulnerability, her small frame trembling as she stared into a room occupied by love and fear intertwined. The moment froze, and all I could hear was the frantic heartbeat of my own trepidation echoing in my ears. It felt as though the air around us thinned, pressed down by the enormity of her presence. "Mom. I'm scared." Her soft plea hit me like a wave, crashing against the shores of my resolve. The weight of our decisions hung heavy in the air. She was the very source of all our fears, yet also the flicker of hope, a beacon guiding us through this end-of-the-world moment. "Sweetheart," my mother rushed toward her, arms open wide, and I saw how quickly desperation could transform into embrace. "We're here. We're all here." In that instant, as I watched them together, I felt the weight of their love mix with my own fears. The broken pieces of our family threatened to slip away beneath the surface, consumed by the relentless tides of uncertainty. Dr. Davis was just explaining. I began, but the words felt inadequate against the raw vulnerability of Ava's wide-eyed gaze. Suddenly, it was clear the conversation no longer belonged solely to the adults. In that moment, I understood that Ava had to be a part of this. "Ava," I knelt beside her, heart racing, "we have to make some choices about your treatments. And I need you to know how much you mean to us, how much we want you to be okay. But I want to know what you think, too." Her eyes darted between mine and the adults in the room, uncertainty etched on her delicate features. "Am I really that sick?" she asked, her tiny voice filling the silence, urgency spilling through each syllable. Tom stepped forward, kneeling beside her. "You're a fighter, Ava, but that doesn't mean we won't face hard times. We have some options laid out, and they might help you." "Options? Trials?" she asked, her innocence piercing through the heaviness in our hearts. "Will they help me get better? Can I still play soccer?" I felt tears well up, unbidden. "If we think they can, we want to fight for every chance to make you better. You just need to tell us what you want." She paused, glancing down at her worn shoes, feet shifting uncomfortably. "I just want to be okay. I want to be able to run and laugh again. I don't want to be sick." Her clarity sliced through the fog of doubt swirling around us. This wasn't just about the adults, this wasn't just about the faceless decisions made behind closed doors. This was about our family, our love desperately intertwined in the fabric of fighting for her future. Dr. Davis watched, her expression softening. "Ava, we'll do everything we can to help you be as healthy as possible, but it's a decision that needs to come together as a family. We can proceed with the trial if you're willing." "What kind of trial?" Ava pressed, her gaze sharp, challenging. "Is it gonna hurt?" No more words fell from my lips. At that moment, I realized it was time to lay everything bare. "It's a lot, and it could hurt a little, but it can also help you feel better than you do right now. And it's okay to be afraid, Ava." "I'm scared," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "Me too," I admitted, choking back tears, but I no longer felt completely alone in that fear. "But that can't stop us from trying. Whatever you decide, we'll face it together." Tom took her small hands in his, the vulnerable grasp of a father unwilling to let go. "Whatever you choose, sweetheart, we'll be proud of you. We'll always choose you. This decision is yours, Ava," I said, my voice thick with emotion. She looked up at each of us, her eyes gleaming like polished stone, a blend of fear, love, and determination. "I want to try." The words fell, raw and weighted, and for the first time amidst the chaos, I felt a resurgence of hope. The air around us shifted, brightened, transformed by our collective willingness to fight together. "Okay," I whispered, my heart swelling as though the universe had indeed expanded to make room for this flicker of joy. Dr. Davis nodded appreciatively, as if relieved by the direction we were now taking. I sensed her decision to connect us with the clinical team who would guide us through the process, a warm beacon guiding the way that as we prepared to stand, the burden of our decisions felt lighter, and I saw the small sparkle of strength rekindle in Ava's eyes. I reached out to join the circle of love surrounding her, pulling my mother in with me, sealing our family bond tighter against the uncertainties that lay ahead. Before we began to navigate the intricate maze of awaiting answers and potential futures together, I paused for a moment. "Ava?" "Yeah," she said softly, looking up at me with those fierce little eyes. "You're a warrior." Her laughter rang out like music, lifting the tension that had plagued us for too long. Maybe we're all warriors then. Perhaps in our shared fear, love had found a powerful way to battle against it all. As we stepped forward, a collective breath filled the room. We were marching into the unknown, our paths intersecting, bound by resilience born from love. And in the stillness that followed, as hope unfurled like a fragile flower pushing through concrete, I knew this was just the beginning of a journey we were ready to face, together, because sometimes, fighting for those we loved meant facing the darkness and daring to find the light in the ash. With that, I intertwined our hands together once more, ready to step forward, united by our love, a love that could withstand any storm. Together, I whispered, an anthem of hope etched on the horizon, and I believed it. Together, we could weather any storm.